Hi everyone, welcome to Value. So today we're going to talk about Twitter and Elon Musk, and it looks like he's already starting to make his changes. So with Twitter Blue, they've had this subscription service since last year, though it probably hasn't been one of those standout highlights, because, well, what does it really add if you're a free user? Maybe if you have a lot of followers, then you do use it. But I think he's proposing for this kind of subscription to be more of an authentication to that profile, that it's real, that it's legit type of situation, rather than, hey, if you subscribe you get those tiny added features. So firstly, what is Twitter Blue going to do? So it's going to possibly look at accepting Dogecoin. Kind of makes sense because Musk is heavily involved with Doge, so why wouldn't he want to link the two between Twitter and Doge? And it's likely he possibly might want Twitter to have a bit more crypto influence going forward in the future. And as he's put, that, hey, if Twitter relies more on its users in terms of subscriptions, it's going to be less reliant on corporations, and hence why it kind of relates to his whole theme of like freedom of speech, and you kind of get where everything's going, that, hey, this guy, he's really incredibly good with designing products and how to link value and the user experience, and I think he's kind of hit the nail on the head, right? So in terms of what's been said, so he wants pricing to come down from $3 a month to $2 a month if they pay that $2 a month for the next 12 months up front, and the account doesn't get checkmarked for 60 days, and it is suspended with no refund if used for spam and scams. So basically, I think that's the key part. It's basically, if you subscribe to Twitter, you basically get an authenticated account that is verified that this account is not spam, and then that kind of helps create filters in a sense of between scams and not scams and spam. So it starts to clean up Twitter in a way that actually enriches the company as well, but not at a heavy cost. Like $2 a month is very affordable for a lot of people, particularly the ones with large followings that do use Twitter a lot to kind of create value. I think in general it creates a better experience by doing that. So basically you're looking at a situation where if people have authentication, then basically we can trust everyone a bit more. So I think it kind of just goes, if you pay the subscription, we can improve your level of trust to another level, because users can see that you've been vetted over 60 days and you're not a spammer or a scammer. And in that way, it kind of does bring some additional kind of feature to a subscription model. And also, I think they said no ads. So it's like no ads. The power of corporations to dictate policy is greatly enhanced if Twitter depends on advertising money to survive. So if they don't rely on that, then corporations don't have as much influence, which I don't know how much influence it has on Twitter, but you can imagine it would have some. And yeah, I think over time they're likely to rely on a subscription model more than they would on advertising, though advertising is still a very core component at the end of the day. But it kind of makes sense. Like, you think about Facebook and all the data it's kind of just given away, it's because of advertising. So it gives Twitter a chance to kind of pivot to a new model where it goes, we're not relying on advertising as much now, so we don't need to use your data, we don't need to give it away. We can kind of just rely on subscriptions, at the same time authenticate that your account is real because we've vetted your account, you're a paying customer, and everything kind of checks out. So in that sense, it kind of looks, it kind of elevates the platform already. So that's kind of what I like about Elon Musk, how he can just go into a company and start thinking outside the box. And it hasn't actually been that long since he's actually come in and brought over 9% of his company, gotten a seat on the board, and he's already looking at changing the company in a much, much better way. Like, I don't know if you agree with that. Like, let me know what your thoughts are. Like, do you think that actually changes the company around, or is that just more of a sense of another money grab? Like, what's your to you? Like, for me personally, I think it does really start to elevate the company a bit more, and starts to pivot around the things that Facebook was not doing too greatly at, particularly the user data kind of situation. So subscription does start to help protect everyone of their user data, that your data is not going to be sold off, because at the end of the day, the company has to make money. If it's not making money from you, in terms of getting money from you, like as it's from subscriptions, it's going to have to get money from corporations, and corporations are always going to want something back, and it's usually in user data. So in terms of where the share price of Twitter at, recently it has slid down by quite a bit. So it did jump around that 38 to 39 to over $50. But if you can imagine that anything that jumps up that much that quick, a lot of people are going to want to take profit. And I don't think people have seen the changes in Twitter to convince them to stay a shareholder for the longer term. But I imagine there's going to be a lot of people that have held Twitter for a long time as well, like years. And when they finally see some profit, they're pretty happy to take it. But I think with Elon Musk starting to just like change things around, it looks like it's a nice new spin that could start to kind of enhance the value of Twitter going forward. But everyone's got their opinion of what that is. But of course, that is solely reliant on, hey, Elon Musk having good influence and helping change things around, and also that people on Twitter actually want to use the subscription service. If they don't want to use the subscription service, then it still has no bearing on the financials, doesn't enhance the company at all, and I guess the share price doesn't really merit a bonus kind of increase. So that's the kind of risk you're getting of buying into Twitter, because their growth is slowing, but it's still at a decent rate in terms of growth. But the biggest pivot is, especially with the increase in the share price, is the value that Elon Musk is going to bring to change it around. And in that sense, it's still a risky bet in that sense, because you don't have a concrete plan and you don't have that certainty. But that's the kind of element that you're paying for. That, hey, the more risk you take, the higher reward that you potentially could get, but potentially you could also be in a losing position if the things don't turn out, because the share price could easily dip back to $39, which at 46, it's not entirely that big of a drop. Like it's decent. I mean, like you were talking about 2030 back down, which no one wants to lose that much, in a short term kind of situation, particularly if it's not going to come back. But I think Twitter is in a situation where it's undervalued for its proposition, and it could easily be much more, but you need kind of ideas to start to unlock that value. It's a good platform that people want to use, but it's just not kind of pivoting to the right areas. And with Elon Musk, it's looking like it's starting to get into that situation with subscription, and also with accepting crypto. That starts to really change that whole kind of theme around the company, and the whole feeling and user experience of how people feel about it, because privacy has never been more important, and freedom of speech as well. But of course, as much as there's freedom of speech, there is still things that cannot be said entirely. But I guess, that's the problem. That's the problems that social platforms kind of have. That, hey, there's always limitations, whether you're being influenced by the people who fund you through advertising, or your biggest kind of user base. Like if you have Elon Musk with 80 million users and he stops using Twitter, that's likely to have an influence on the amount of people that continue to stay on Twitter, or other celebrities. There's always some influences on these platforms one way or another, but if they can start changing that, then it's a very good direction for the company. So that's kind of what my thoughts are, and it's just kind of nice to see kind of glimpses of where Twitter could be heading in the future. Until then, good luck investing, everyone.